Welcome to Grow Sessions. This is Tony from TSRgrow. I've got my good friend Jordan from Marino Group here, Marino PR. Jordan, how you doing today?
Doing great, Tony. Thanks for having me.
This is it's awesome. Thanks for setting aside the time. And we've got a little bit the new year, so starting off right from the rip on some good subjects and jumping right into it.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a great year. 2024 had its challenges, but new year, new page. Let's go.
Let's do it. Jordan, tell everyone to the listeners that don't know you. I know a lot of people out in the cannabis world do know you and Marino, but tell us a little bit about you and like how you got into the industry.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks again. So yeah, my name's Jordan Isenstadt. I'm a senior vice president at Marino PR, which is a 30-year-old strategic communications firm. We're based in New York. We do everything from higher education PR, real estate, nonprofit, food and beverage, you name it. We've probably touched that sector. Cannabis is one of our newer areas, although we've been in it for about 8 years now. Prior to being at Marino, I started my career in government. I worked for two state senators in New York. Worked for a couple of PR firms, ran a nonprofit group called the Association for a Better New York. Did a stint with an international digital learning startup, and then arrived at Marino a little over 8 years ago. When I got to Marino, it was kind of the culmination of all this work that I had done in the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. Kind of was able to bring it all together in lots of different work that I've done over those 8 to 9 years. I've had the opportunity to focus a lot on public affairs work, which led right into cannabis. So, in my background, as I mentioned, I've done a lot of work in government with regulatory sorts of things, compliance, etc. So it was a natural to look at cannabis. At the time, 8 years ago or so, New York was close to legalizing recreationally. New Jersey was looking to legalize, and so we dipped our toe in. Was able to land a big client right off the bat. It was the predecessor company to Curaleaf. They were called Paleotech, for all those who remember. And we've been building a practice ever since then, working with cannabis companies and operators of all shapes and sizes, from the Curaleafs and the large MSOs to single state operators, to cultivators and processors and brands around the country, though we definitely have a focus on New York and New Jersey.
Cool.
Over the past couple of years, we've had the wonderful pleasure of being on the ground and supporting the launch of dozens of dispensaries in the New York and New Jersey area. So it's been awesome to be a part of an important part of the rollout here in New York and New Jersey. We also have a nice cannabis tech practice where we work with Dutchie and LeafLink
Oh,
and a
cool.
lot of other ancillaries and service providers. So,
That's awesome. You
we've
guys got your
touched,
hands in a lot of stuff. You guys are
yeah.
listen, it's really very broad spectrum of things that you're doing. Um, let's jump right into like some things that, like we had chatted about before. What makes the cannabis PR different than other types of PR?
Yeah, great question. So cannabis PR is really unlike most any really other PR that I've done before. First of all, there's federal prohibition. Anyone who's
Yeah,
listening to this,
everybody
I'm
who's in
sure
it knows it.
knows the challenges of federal prohibition. And so, of course, federal prohibition, does not allow most cannabis companies to advertise normally. There are obviously social media restrictions. So that's what makes PR so important. PR is really what we call earned media. So there's, paid media, which is advertising, social media, which everyone knows, and then owned media, which is like your website and other assets like that. Earned media is when we get our clients in the newspaper or on TV or on a podcast or something
Nice.
along those lines. And so earned media is so important in cannabis because you can't advertise and you can't market yourself normally like any other industry, basically. So that's
No, so many
one area.
restrictions.
Right, exactly. So that's one area that's super unique about cannabis PR. Another reason that cannabis PR is so unique is again because of prohibition. You have these individual state markets. And so
Yeah.
each market is different. And so, while we do work with, some companies that are national in scope, like the MSOs and Dutchy and LeafLink, we have lots and lots of clients that are single state entities, and they have no plans or no ability, frankly, to become a national player. And cannabis is covered by the media differently in each state. So, again,
Yeah.
like many of your
A lot of
listeners,
silos. There's a lot of silos by each state because each state does,
exactly.
you're right, has their own regulations and there has their kind of their own rules that they operate by. Like for instance, that when you were saying that, like in Rhode Island, they couldn't advertise a state grower and dispensary couldn't advertise on the billboard here, but a Massachusetts grower could.
Right.
Like,
Right.
okay, like so what? Like it was very very weird, like how the rules don't cross state lines. So yeah, it's you're definitely weaving. It's a lot of weaving and trying to bob and weave to figure that stuff out.
It's a lot of weaving, and it's one of the the reasons that we've set out to become experts in certain states, because the way that New York, I mean, first of all, like the laws in New York, the way that the New York cannabis scheme was rolled out is very different than how it was done in
Yeah,
our the neighboring state in New Jersey. In fact, in many ways, they were opposite of each other. So the conditions are different, the regulations are different. Obviously, the media outlets are different, and the way that
yep.
the media covers cannabis from state to state to state is a little different. It's a little nuanced. So this sort of patchwork quilt of state by state legalization is, another big component um, of cannabis PR and marketing. A final area that makes cannabis unique, although it's definitely something that you're seeing in lots of other industries as well, is the rise of the influencer.
Yeah,
Influencer marketing has become a really big deal in many industries. In cannabis, it's just as important as others. In fact, because of some of those federal prohibition of advertising, in some ways, influencer marketing is even more important because it
interesting.
shows to the consumer the the authenticity of those brands or of those retailers. So influencer marketing is a huge part of our business, and a growing part of the cannabis business.
That's interesting you say that the influencer market because it's so funny. Like you do see a lot of people, and they'll latch onto a celebrity type person. They'll latch onto someone who's popular and whatever it is. And it's quite interesting that it is a big part of the business, or like the followers and how many people and their reach, how far their reach is. Um,
Exactly.
so it's actually it's just interesting, like on how those kind of things work. Um, I wanted to touch base too on a couple of things too. Thank you for that. Like the differences, when we're talking about like PR, because there is so many different, like the landscape is so different. What do you think about, what do you feel like some of the trade shows and like MJBizCon? I know we just saw each other out there. It was brief because it was kind of busy and hectic, but
Always
give me your
is.
feeling.
Always is,
Give
right?
me your feeling. What did you like and dislike about MJBiz?
Yeah, this was my sixth MJBizCon. My it's funny because the first couple that I went to, 2018, 2019, I was such a newbie in the industry. I spent so much time at the show itself, learning and going from,
All the
vendor to
different
vendor
booths
to
and yeah,
exhibitor,
all
and
the
spent,
different
so
vendors and all
much
the
time in there. And I also, I knew far fewer, people than I know now. Um, now I think I'm one of those people who I go to Vegas because everyone's there, but I don't necessarily go to the show. I'm not
yeah.
really spending that much time, on the trade show floor. I'll spend time, at the convention center, but probably not on the floor. More for meetings, nearby the show. I spent a lot of time at the Chandelier Bar,
Oh yeah.
at the Cosmopolitan, and what was interesting this year was that, whereas in prior years, really during the day, most of the activity was at the convention center.
Yep.
This year, Planet 13 had like a almost like a shadow convention of sorts where they had a whole day of panels and speaking there. There were many more day events going on.
Yep.
So I mean, I love MJBizCon week because it's a great opportunity to connect with clients, friends like yourself,
Yep.
and colleagues, prospective clients, connect with reporters and influencers and whatnot. Um, but I honestly didn't spend that much time at the show itself. If you're in the, if you're in the market for, for lights,
Yeah.
or if you're in the market for, packaging or things like
Some of the
that,
ancillary goods and things.
it makes a ton of sense to spend your time at the show and pound the show floor, because again, everybody's there. It really just depends on what your goals are.
Yeah, what you're
Um,
looking to do, because there's definitely so much to do at the show. We're on the trade show floor a lot, and then there's, like you say, there's so many different meetings and so many things going on, and trying to make the connections with everybody. I mean, I read a lot of stuff on LinkedIn and on like Instagram, and like there's a touch of negativity that goes around about some of the shows and I still find it very beneficial because it doesn't take you just need a couple clients, like everybody wants to close 1 million deals, and God bless you if you can. But I just think that you need to talk about, what do you feel like there's been a bunch of negativity about the show. Any thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, it still remains the
It is
the
the show.
Super Bowl of weed,
It really is.
the weed prom. I mean, I feel like I heard all these different, terms that week about it. And, it still is like it is the place to be. And if you're not there, I do believe you're missing out. I do think that it was interesting. This year was interesting because a lot of people whom I had spent time with in Vegas in the past were not there this year. And I think some of that was because of the expense.
Yep.
We all know that, 2024 wasn't the most up year. So some people had to make a choice
Yes,
about
for
whether
sure.
or not to spend the money. I do work with a lot of people in the New York and New Jersey markets. And so those folks were grinding, they're opening their store, launching their brands, and they didn't have time to go out for the week. That being said, it's still the place to be. I think, what, 30 to 35,000 of our cannabis industry colleagues are there.
Yeah, it's a lot of
So
people there for sure.
it's incredibly valuable. The networking, to me, the real value is the networking. Whether you network and meet people on the floor or you network and meet people when you party hop, in the evenings, or you set up dinners or meetings or whatever. I mean, everyone has their own secret sauce to how to make it work. But it is where the people are,
Yeah,
where
there's a
the
lot of
industry
people there. You're
is.
you're right for sure. What do you feel like how can like a business, and or like, is it a dispensary cultivation, whatever that part of it is, or is it an ancillary person that's selling something, similar to what we do? How do you feel that they can make like a splash with PR? How can that, like, what is there something that they can do to like really make themselves stand out?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of probably the best thing that you like, we never recommend, because it's such a crowded week and there's so much going
Yeah.
on. It's never a great idea to like launch a new product. That comes up a lot with clients. They're like, we want to launch this new product the week of MJ Biz, and we often say, not a great idea. It's a pretty crowded week. What you might want to do though is launch your new product 2 weeks beforehand or 4 weeks beforehand, and then you have something to talk about.
Yep.
In terms of when you're pounding the pavement on the floor, if you launch something a few weeks before or a month before, it also gives someone like myself, your PR representative, it gives us the opportunity to pitch the media that are going to be there. Because again, just like everyone is there, the media is all there as well. All the major players in the cannabis trade media and some of the mainstream as well will be there. So if you've launched something or you have something to say, you really want to do it in advance, 2 to 4 to 6 weeks in advance. Give yourself a little runway, and then we can build some buzz. Um, we had a couple of clients, whether it was Dutchy with their Dutchy 2.0 or LeafLink as well had recently, launched, some new products. We were able to talk about those and transact on them in Vegas as a result of the fact that they had already launched. Definitely don't recommend coming in and launching something at Vegas.
Yep.
This week is the Consumer Electronics Show, which is also in Vegas. And that's a show that's like known for major companies to like launch a brand new product and like showcase it on the floor. That's different.
Yes,
That
different.
makes
Yeah, I
a
think
lot
it's
of
a different
sense,
animal.
but it's a totally different animal. But sometimes, leadership kind of gets this, oh, we want to do a CES kind of thing. And like it doesn't really make sense. The other thing that you can do to make a big splash is to host a party.
Yep.
Try to figure out something unique, not just, sort of your standard happy hour. If you can do something special, whether it's like a concert or a unique theme for a party, something memorable. That's another way to make a touch point with customers and prospective customers. And it's not necessarily for PR. It's really more for kind of perception. Of
Yeah,
course,
for sure.
we would invite media to come to those parties if we were, working on behalf of clients who are throwing parties. But that's where a lot of the action is at
Yeah, it's at
the
these after
events.
events. I see it too. Exactly what you said though with the parties, and people don't have to with like it doesn't even matter what event you're doing, but MJ Biz being that we're chatting about that, like you don't have to host it all on your own. There's so many people you can partner with. I loved seeing that there was so much collaboration at events. Like there'll be an event at whatever XYZ hotel, but there's like five or six or maybe even eight different not vendors, but people that are participating in it. It helps offset the cost so it doesn't become this giant spend for a business. But also too, you get a little bit more reach because maybe you'll meet some more people that you wouldn't have met before, which I think is super beneficial.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I mean, if you can find like the right party that's the right fit for your company and like the culture, then it makes a ton of sense to sponsor a party. You may have to, spend a few dollars to make that happen, but I have found, over the last couple of years, Marino has sponsored and helped facilitate these Jews in Weed bagel bash
Oh
events.
yeah.
And so, this year it was Marino along with Feuerstein Kulik and, many other cannabis players and brands who, came together to, host an event at a consumption lounge in Vegas. We found great bagels in Vegas, which was one of our challenges. But we did find good bagels in Vegas. And it paid dividends for,
Well, it's
all
nice
of
too. It's
the
not at
partners
night
and
either. It's during the
sponsors.
day. You guys did it for I think it was like 9 to noon or 9 to 1, which is nice because
Exactly.
some people that might go to the trade show later in the day, or they're gonna go, or it gives somebody something to do during the day too, where everybody's trying to cram into hop from party to party to party at night. And at some point you just got to figure out like I say it a lot with the evening parties. I'm like, if you go there and if you don't feel like there's the connections that you're making within an hour, like it's time to move on to the next one because you don't have to stay there all night and not be it's a waste of time. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to be around the people where you're always moving the ball forward versus you're just kind of sitting there and just you see people just overindulging.
Yeah, I feel like that's always a debate that I hear. Do you go to one party and like invest all your time in that, or do you go to four or five or six and try to party hop? And I mean, there's no right answer.
There really isn't. I mean,
It's a gut feeling, right? Like,
yes.
am I getting what I need out of this event? And if you're not, move on to the next because
Yeah, it's
I
okay to
know
move on, and there's no one's going to hold it against you. And I think everybody's so busy at some of these at MJ Biz that if you don't get to go to see someone and you touch base on like, hey man, everybody's just crazy. Like, yeah, they get it. Like, no one's if you get offended, that's kind of lame. I mean, because
I would agree.
I mean,
I
it's
would
so
agree.
hard to get to everything. And too, there's like you said, like you're at. the hotel and you're going to events and you're hosting events and you're helping your clients where like we're on a show floor, so I can't get to certain things, and it's just what it is. Like I'm working on the floor and it's what I just can't get to everything, and I'd love to go to everything, but I just can't.
You just can't. You just can't. Look, there's far too much going on to be able to get to everything. So, you do what you can. It's relentless. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
The nights tend to be pretty late.
Oh yeah.
And depending on where you're flying from or coming in from, fly in from New
We're East Coast
York.
guys, yeah.
So no matter what, even if I went to bed at 2 a.m., I wake up at 5 or
Yeah.
5:30 because my clock just says I'm up. And so you just have to kind of just, fight through it. And then, you get on the airplane to go home and you can breathe.
Yeah.
And hopefully you've collected a lot of business cards and made a lot of new contacts and, transact on it.
Yeah,
I will
following up on it.
say, I will say that, there are two other, kind of observations, or I guess maybe, so if I was running MJBizCon and in my perfect world, one thing would be, do we have to do it in Vegas? I know
Agreed.
that's like the historic legacy. That's where it's always been, but do we have to? Can we
Someone told me
consider?
recently that it was in another state when it started. I want to say it was like down south somewhere. It wasn't always in Vegas, but I don't know.
I don't know.
I have to research that myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It would
everyone
be kind of
talks
cool
about.
going to another state. It would actually kind of be interesting. I mean, Vegas is fun, but again, you're probably like I am. Like you don't get to go see the sights and get out. You're working.
Yeah,
I don't get to
yeah,
go. And someone's like, "Do you see any shows?" I'm like, "I've been there 15 times. I've never seen a show in Las Vegas."
yeah.
I mean,
We
I'm working.
actually pro tip, we did fly in one day early.
Yes.
And so I did get to, it was the Monday night of that week. And so we did get to go to the Sphere,
Oh,
which was
fun.
great. And we did get to go to Meow Wolf, which is like an immersive experience
Interesting.
place in the Chinatown area. So that was fun. I really never get to do stuff like that
No, we
when I'm in
never do. Like
Vegas. So if
we come
you
in and we're
if
ready to like we come in and we're just happy to get a dinner, and then the next day we're setting up the booth all day. Then we're right
yeah,
into it, and then
yeah.
we're then after the show ends on Friday, we're breaking down, and we used to fly out on that evening. Red eyes are terrible. I don't care for that flight personally, but it's I don't mind flying out the next Saturday because you're losing the Saturday anyways. But yeah, we're there for quite a long stretch. What do you feel for like companies that want to do some PR before, like I know you touched on it a little before, like launching an item, 4 to 6 weeks before, but like what do you feel like is, another touch point of what's important for them if they were trying to get out there and get their name and their brand out at MJ Biz? What do you think they should do?
Well, if one of the things I know, we've also talked about is, there's the MJs, right? So there
Oh yeah,
are, various like, awards programming. If you're fortunate enough to be in the conversation around the MJs, which obviously TSR was, congratulations again.
thank you very much.
And Marino, we were a finalist for PR Agency of the Year. We didn't win, but just to be in the conversation is awesome. And so, in the months leading up to it, we basically did a little mini campaign. First for the nomination, to actually get nominated, and then as a finalist, to also get votes. So, even at Marino, a PR firm, and obviously we were promoting our clients as well, but we were also promoting ourselves as a finalist. So there are opportunities like that where you can kind of get your name out,
Sure.
and throw a spotlight on your company as a part of the kind of fabric of MJ BizCon, or kind of a part of the week. Beyond that, I've gone alone to Vegas for up until this year. This is the first year that a colleague came with me. So depending on your company and depending on sort of the size of your team and your resources, the more people that you can bring to Vegas, the better as well, because you can divide and conquer.
For
Like we
sure.
were saying, there's like a lot to do. So if you can divide and conquer and have people at, multiple parties at the same time, you can like, meet a lot of people.
Well, they have to have like
Um,
an objective and a plan. You kind of like I do that too. Like I go through in my notepad and I go up and down every row of the show floor and say, who do I need to talk to? Who haven't I talked to in a while? Who's new? What's exciting? What should I see? And I try to stick with it, but it's in 5 years it's fallen apart. I mean, it always falls apart. I mean, because you can't get to everything. And then like, I'm walking away to go meet someone and then I get a phone call. Hey, this person's here to meet you at the, they didn't schedule a time, which was fine. Now I got to run back to my booth to go make sure I meet up with someone that's a
right.
potential client. But I think it's good. And I think that, like you say, I think that you can get some miles out of, leading up to the MJs. Like you're right. Do a mini campaign. Do they help us get nominated for an award? Help us win the award, type of thing. Like, so they can actually really play the whole MJBizCon because they're publicity wagon as well. I mean, they're kind of getting their
Yep.
name out there. And if you keep on putting it out there, tagging them, I think it's hugely beneficial to get recognition in the industry.
Yep. The other thing too is, part of what's, part of MJ BizCon as well is like you have the people like us who are kind of veterans. We've
Mm,
done it, a bunch of times. We like, have pro tips, like I was saying before. And then but every year you're going to have thousands and thousands of people who are brand new. Maybe they're not even in the industry yet, or they want to get into the industry, or they're about to launch a company, or whatever the case may be. So, um, both sort of me from Marino, but also some of our clients who are going to be there who are also experienced, we recommend that they, create content, whether that's on, your own channels or, in the form of like a written article that, maybe we can get published in an outlet or a paper or something like that, to talk about, your experiences. I mean, I often put out an article, tips from an MJ BizCon veteran. And
I like
so,
that.
kind of have like, frankly, some of what we're talking about here, like spend time on the floor if this is your goal, spend time at, the parties if networking is your goal, and then a bunch of pro tips, right? Like drink a lot of water because Vegas is really dry.
Wear comfortable shoes.
Buy
It's okay to
chapstick,
take
wear
a break and
comfortable
rest.
shoes.
It was funny, like I ran into someone. So we're at the MJ's, and I ran into a childhood friend of my wife. Actually, like he lives in our town, and I didn't know he was in the industry. And he's like, I'm not. He was like a medical device guy, and they sell. I think it's what they sell. They sell like sanitizing equipment for like hospitals and biomed, but they're now dipping their toes into it. So they came out to Vegas and they went to some different events and they went to the show, but they're trying to see, there's still companies, sometimes I feel like you say, as a veteran, like you feel like you've been in the industry forever. And, 5 years feels like 40. And, it's crazy.
Dog ears. It's dog
Dog
ears,
years.
man.
But like people are still getting into it. The industry is still it's still so early, like as a global industry and as a collective. I mean, and there's so much to do, and it's things that are changing. It's just a moving target constantly.
Oh yeah. I mean, and look, that's what's fun about cannabis. It's also what's challenging about it, that it's, going a million miles a minute and changing constantly, but it's also the very beginning
Yeah,
of the industry. I mean, I want to acknowledge all of the legacy
of course.
pre-legalization people who tread the path. I mean, they're the real veterans. Me, in the industry for 8 years. I'm practically a kid
Oh yeah,
compared to
you're we're
them,
newborn. We're newborn to some of the legacy guys.
to some of the legacy people, but in cannabis industry, legal cannabis industry terms, we've been around a while. We know how these things work, and so it's helpful to kind of spread the knowledge. That's part of what's nice about cannabis as well, is that we're a very collaborative industry,
Oh, for
and I find
sure.
that everyone's like pretty nice. So people want to share, people want to help each other out. You know, you met your wife's childhood friend there and you wanted to,
It's just
you know,
weird. And I
you
sent
wanted
my
to help
wife a
them
picture,
out.
and she's like, "What is he doing there?" I'm like, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I just ran into him. Like, I see him walking through a hall. It's just kind of weird. But you're right though. Like helping people out too, and like trying to. I feel like the industry's like that, and like I always describe it to people. I'm like, have you ever met? I call them. This is, I don't know if it's negative or positive. High functioning potheads. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
generally pretty happy people. I mean, they're pretty happy go lucky, and it's kind of it's a refreshing that they're, there's, I mean, everybody has their challenges in every state and everything that they're doing, but like say overall, like everybody wants to help each other, and I mean, there's a lot of competition out there, and that's fine, but there's so much business to be had. I feel that you can be friends with everyone.
100%, 100%. Yeah, it's a very friendly, collaborative industry. I mentioned that we were like a finalist for the MJs, and you know, the folks who won over at Grasslands, Ricardo, the founder of Grasslands, has become a friend. He's a great guy. Rosie Matteo from Matteo is awesome. You know, Shauna from Maverick, Stu from Bridge. I mean, these all the PR folks are great people, and we all have our sort of unique take and specialty and expertise. Maybe sometimes we're competing for business, but there's so much opportunity to collaborate, and it's so early stage that there's really no reason to be, battling it out, with each other. And my first MJBizCon in 2018, like I said, I spent a ton of time on the floor. I listened to every speech. And I remember the very first speech from the former editor, Chris Walsh. He said, "We're at the first step of the first mile of a marathon," right?
So
And that
true.
was then. So maybe we're at the second step of the first mile of the marathon. We got a long way to go.
I
And
think
there's
so
a
too.
lot of white space, and we have to work together.
I think there's so much stuff, and I think it's an evolving industry, an evolving market, and you have to kind of stay present with it because, like you said, rules are changing, regulations are changing. You see people they're having all sorts of new talks in DC now about rescheduling, descheduling. There's all different. There's so much. It's such an interesting industry where
Yeah.
I feel like there's always so much to talk about within the industry. And then even today, like I had calls today, like I'm talking to different cultivators, talking to someone that's just getting in versus someone who is in versus someone that needs help with, an expansion. So there's just so many different avenues in the industry that it's not just that, here's a pen. There's so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But
Um,
I do like collecting pens and
I,
lighters
I
and
I've done that
stickers.
before. I was on a mission one time to get pens, and I think I ended up getting about 65 from one of the shows. I just all these different pens. And some of them were great, some of them were duds. I'm like, okay, mental note, don't use that. Throw that in
Don't
the
use that
garbage.
one. Yeah.
No, throw that in the garbage. Cool looking pen, but didn't work.
Yeah. I
Um,
will say the lighters though, the lighters are I have lighters from 5 years ago from Las Vegas that they're companies that I only know who they are because of the
because
lighter.
of the
So,
lighter.
some of that swag
Some of
works.
it works, some of it works. It's so tough. And then yeah, because how much stuff can you bring and how many things can you have in your booth as like a vendor? I mean, there's so much stuff. Um, what do you feel like in cannabis? How is the PR industry evolving?
So, yeah, I mean, I mentioned before the influencer
Hmm.
work that that's a really good example of the, kind of evolution. For like I'll zoom into New York as an example. So we've been very involved in New York. We've been very involved in the rollout. About 2 years ago, actually, was when the first couple of stores opened. And so, we were at those openings because we work with Dutchy, so that was the POS, or House of Paw for Heirloom or whatever. Other clients of ours were, products on the shelves. And so, we were there, and all the media was there, right? Like all the New York media was there. There was so much excitement. There were 10 cameras and 15, print journalists, and it was kind of insane. We started doing some of these opening events, grand opening events for some of the early dispensaries. And after about a year of doing different dispensary openings, the media was less interested.
It's not as
There
exciting anymore.
wasn't as exciting. There were no more firsts, for the
Yes.
first year, it was like the first, the first in Queens, the first women owned, the first in this, area, the first in, Chelsea, an area in Manhattan, is the first Jewish owned, you can keep on doing the first. Eventually we ran out of first. There was a little less media interest because it was kind of just a retread of stories that had been done. So we evolved into more of an influencer model, right? Not that
Okay.
we're not still doing PR and
Yeah, grand
press and
openings and PRs
trying
and
to,
stuff like that.
yeah,
Yep.
trying to get media interested, but influencers are kind of like the new media in many ways. And so about a year ago, actually, we started to add in influencer marketing as a key component of our work with dispensaries and brands. And we highly recommend that our clients in those spaces engage in influencer marketing, whether with us or internally, it doesn't really matter, but you've got to be looking at it. Look, you've got to have a full marketing mix at the end of the day. You have to have social media, you have to have influencer. If you can do advertising, you should, do some kind of advertising. But where it's PR has evolved, to now include influencers. I think it also just the storytelling around cannabis continues
Yeah,
to
for sure.
change and evolve, right? It's like the
It
the
is
way that
funny you said that, the story, because I say that a lot to people when they ask how we got into it or what do I find interesting, or I'll be talking to someone. I'm like, everyone has a cool and unique story. Like, there's not a grower that you go talk to that just says, I got into this because I wanted to do. It wasn't like, hey, I saw I could, a lot of times people are motivated by money, but the majority of the time it's so not the motivation of money. It's, hey, my mom was sick or my aunt was doing this and we needed a safe outlet to grow weed. So I started growing weed, and then all of a sudden this opportunity came, and like it zigzags and all around, and you're like, this is the coolest. Like, everyone has a cool story of how they got into it. And some of it's business, and that's great. But I mean, the majority of the people have this cool, path that they had chose to get to this, the end result of, like, hey, they're growing some really neat product, they're processing it down, and they're growing these certain strains because they knew that Bubba Kush relaxed them to do this, and this one from Lighthouse does, it helps me with my restless leg for MS, and like it's really, really, really interesting. Like, this story, like I love it because everybody's got a cool story, other than I grow the best weed.
100%, 100%. There actually, to your very first question about what makes cannabis PR different, that's another really solid point that you make. That cannabis PR is it's heavily built around you know leadership, human interest stories, like how did the how did why and how did the founder found the company, right? Because almost always there is some kind of unique story behind it, whether it was a personal kind of malady or illness, or a parent who with end of life care. I mean,
Yep.
sometimes a lot of the stories have a kind of like a bittersweet aspect to them. But everyone comes at it from a different, unique point of view, and that's where a lot of the storytelling comes, right? I mean, it's like there's only so many ways that you can slice. This company is great because of
Because
all the
yeah,
things they're doing, right? But if they have a really interesting founding story, that means a lot, and it means a
it
lot for this
totally
industry
does.
too. And you know, I think generally in terms of consumer marketing, the consumer craves authenticity in a way that I think has evolved even over the last like 10 years. And especially younger people, they're really craving like some kind of a connection with the
Yeah, they
brand.
want there, if there's a real connection there, that people definitely go into it. And then I had actually had a guy on our podcast too. The guy tells this story, and he was a vet and he was on all these medicines, and he tells the story about like how he got this. He's an amputee, and like he's missing some limbs, but the guy is cool. He's like, world like strongman competition guy too. The guy was so awesome. his name's Derek Carver, but anyways, just a good
Awesome.
dude. He's just a good dude. But like he tells his story about like how all the medications he was on, and then he's like, I felt terrible on all these medications, and I'm dipping into booze and all this other stuff. And he goes, I they have to wean themselves off of all these medications, something to wake up, something to go to sleep, something to, help their high blood pressure, something to lower their blood. And like they had all this stuff. And he's like, I started smoking like a vape pen and I felt better. He says, and the why in the VA and the federal is it's not legal to do that and they can't prescribe that. They just want to pill you up. And he's just like,
Yeah.
and he starts talking about it, and you're like, oh my God. Like, so you meet one person, it's their individual story and their individual space and time. But how many other people does that touch? Like on the
Hmm.
broader picture, you're like, this is the coolest thing. It's a cool industry. I'm sorry. Still think every day you meet someone neat and something new that they can do. I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's it's you hear I feel like I hear this a lot in the industry, but you know, even with all the tumult and the highs and the lows, I still feel like I have to pinch myself every once in a while and be like,
oh for sure.
I work in legal weed? Really?
I high functioning potheads, man. I deal with the best people ever. I'm like, I think it's awesome. I deal with them and they're pretty awesome. What do you think? So, like, I know we're looking up at our time, and I don't want to like kill our days here, but what's one piece of advice you'd give to a cannabis company looking to improve their PR strategy?
Yeah. The I think the
Might
most
not be just
important
one.
thing.
You can do more than one.
Yeah, yeah. But it will, and I mean, I think this plays off of what we were just talking about to some degree, but like find your why.
Yep.
Why am I doing this? And why would the, why would my end user, whether that's a, cannabis consumer or, in your case, like an operator or an
Yeah.
MSO, like what's your why? What I mean? Obviously, like, in any industry, you need a value proposition and stuff like that. But I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
in cannabis in particular, it's the why. And sometimes it's that personal story, right? It's that, like one of our clients is a cannabis lawyer, and she got into cannabis because of her mother's ends of life care, and has now
Yep.
become one of the most, incredible cannabis lawyers in New York, and founded her own firm, and it's an all female cannabis firm, and it's like it's a great story, right? And so it's like that's that's her
That's her
why.
why.
And she's also developed many sort of unique strategies, like not doing billable hours, and things that are sort of very unique for a law firm. Similarly, like at Marino, our why is to normalize and destigmatize cannabis. That is, at the end of the day, our why is that we use our clients' stories, or leverage our clients' stories
Sure.
to help normalize and destigmatize, so that we can advance this industry, so that by the time my kids are adults, they'll be looking at a very different cannabis industry than the one that
Oh yeah.
that we have today, and much more kind of like understood. So if you're looking to dip into PR and to tell your story, the first thing you really need to do is figure out your why.
Yep.
Then another thing you need to
Do
do.
you help clients with their why a little bit? They might, because they might not be able to verbalize it. Or
Totally.
if I had like a story that like I told it to you, it could have I told it to you in 2 hours, but it could have been said in 2 minutes. Do you help people with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what PR really is taking complicated things, concepts, whatever, and boiling them down into something that a layman can understand or a consumer will understand. So, yeah, I mean, we'll our like usually our first meeting with new clients is a 1 to 2 hour discovery call.
Sure.
Out of that call, the main deliverable is a messaging document, which is usually 5 bullets, right? So
Yep.
boiling down all the information that we got into something that is, for the consumer, but also, I mean, we're also talking to media. So we
Yep.
also, the most journalists, cannabis trade journalists, they're experts in cannabis, but a lot of the journalists we deal with are mainstream. Maybe they've never even touched weed before. So we got to really boil this stuff down and simplify it and make them understand.
Or they're
Uh,
still into that mentality of like the 80s of this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs, any questions type guerrilla
exactly.
marketing they did, and like everybody come to find out it's really not that bad.
Exactly. The other thing, after you figure out your why and you've kind of boiled it down, then another thing that we help with, or if you need to do your own PR, that's fine. You don't always need a firm. Um, is to figure out what you're an expert in. What is the value that you can add to a journalist that either no one else could add or very few people could add to the conversation. So, again, we have clients from, all throughout the industry, and they all have a unique expertise that they can offer, whether that's in, wholesale technology or cannabis law or retail point of sale or, government relations in a
Yep.
specific state. Everybody has a specific expertise. So what's your expertise, and how can we get you in front of media so that you can express your expertise or
Yeah, so
showcase your expertise?
people can get to like they can learn about you and get to know you and know more about you. Well, this has
Yeah.
been awesome, Jordan. Thank you. It's like touching on the PR thing because I feel people don't understand like the whole PR role and how it can play hugely into getting people's brand and brand awareness, and they're getting their name and recognition out there. This has been an awesome just dialogue. Is there anything that we missed that you think that's super important, like for like the next steps if someone wanted to like talk to a PR firm like yourself? Like I know that I mean we'll tag everything at the bottom and put it and post it with it. But what do you feel like is the best thing for the next steps for someone to like get a hold of you?
Yeah, look, it's if you're considering PR, or you've worked with a firm, and maybe it wasn't great. You want to, like, so much of it is about chemistry, right?
For
So
sure.
I think one of the key things, if you're looking into potentially hiring a PR firm, is you want to talk to a few different people. You want to get some recommendations and references, of course, just like with anything. But the vibe is really important. Like,
Yeah.
does this team understand me? And sometimes not every firm is a right fit, or maybe the expertise is a little off. So it's always good to have a couple of calls. If you can meet with the team in advance rather than just the leadership, that's always good to just like get a vibe, make sure like everyone gets along and is cool. So chemistry, I think, really counts for a lot in this industry and beyond cannabis. Um, and beyond that, you just want to find a team that you jive with and understands your story. And then you also want to make sure that you set expectations, right? I mean, one of the key things that we always try to do at the outset is to ask our client, new client, what is your ideal headline and what is your ideal media outlet? Because that gives us a sense of what their expectations are. And sometimes it's perfect, and sometimes it's completely out of whack.
That's
We will
fun.
often hear from clients, a headline that is very self-serving and the New York Times. And we will often say back, why do you want the New York Times? You think that the New York Times is, gonna solve all your problems. The truth is that for, you know, many like dispensaries, let's say, what you want is to be featured in local media.
Yes.
You want to be featured with the people who are your customers. The New York Times is probably not, it's too big. You're not going to
It's a
necessarily
huge
hit.
that's their reach is big and they're touching everyone and everybody knows about them and even like their web. But is that your clientele? What's your client base?
Exactly. So it's, yeah, figuring out your target audience and how do you get to them. And so that question that we always ask, about title and about headline and ideal media outlet, it helps tell us a lot about what the expectations are. And then, we may have to set expectations and manage expectations. But if I was on the other side, as the client, I think that's a really important thing to set from the get-go.
Yeah, right
This
off the
is what
rip,
I
if they know
want. Can you
what's
do it?
important.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for today. This has been amazing. I love learning about like everybody, what they do in the industry because it's so cool. And then what we'll do is we'll obviously get your information at the bottom, how people can reach out to you via social media. They can reach out to you through your website. I'm sure they can reach you on LinkedIn. Jordan Isenstadt. I said it right.
You got it.
Dead on. Um,
Dead on.
dead on. But yeah, so we'll post this, and then this is great. And if people want to reach out to you, this is just a great jump off point so they can learn a little bit more about Marino PR.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'm always available to talk cannabis PR. Obviously looking to continue to, grow my network and meet new people in the industry. Like you said, it sounds like you'll have some of the information in the show notes, but
Absolutely.
you can always reach me at cannabis@marinopr.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jordan, for your time.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you,
All
man.
right.